Hello there, people of the internet. My name is Udwiri Jagero, and this is Dialogues with Jagero. How do I look? Do I look wonderful?
How do I look?
Yeah. We are recording.
How am I looking at Jagero? You have to look at your back chart.
This is Dialogues with Jagero with Mildred Awino. We talked about spirituality, we talked about religion, and now we are going to be talking about stars. And Awino, you told me that you are very stoked. You are very excited about talking about stars.
Yes, I think this will be my first time talking about stars in depth in any kind of forum other than my social media. Okay. So I'm excited.
What? Just background about the stars, why they're important in our lives.
Okay. Just to start as a background, I know one of the points that people raise when you're talking about the stars, astrology, is that it's not visible, that to think that the planetary bodies would affect you here on Earth. So I usually tell such people that no, that's actually what people used to say in ancient astrology. That's how people used to practice astrology in the medieval era. And astrology is just like any other system. Any other system of knowledge, it evolves. The same way in medicine, people who are performing lobotomies and bloodletting in the early 1900s is not the same thing people are doing now. So medicine has also advanced. So astrology is a social science that keeps advancing. Now, from an astrological, a modern astrological point of view, you have to think of the stars as not as the actual astronomical bodies that you're seeing. When we are referring to planetary bodies, we are referring to them as representatives of certain celestial principles. I'll give you an example. If you talk about the moon, the astronomical moon, you'll tell me things like, it controls the tides, the cycles. You tell me about the full moon, the lunations from the new moon to the full moon. And you'll be perfectly and well in order. But then if I ask you to tell me about the astrological moon, or if I tell you about the astrological moon, it is not the moon that you see out there, the astronomical one. Yeah. So for the astrologers, you have to look at the planetary body as being multifaceted. So it means something in astronomy, and it also means something in astrology. So if you look at the solar system or the planetary map, it is internalized. It is seen as a map of the psyche now in modern astrology. For instance, the moon is the faculty that you use when you are pushed to the corner, when you are acting out of instinct, right? The sun is the principal force that pushes you towards achievement in life. Whereas people right now know a lot more about their sun sign, which is great. Yeah. But again, it's not the only sign. It's not the only, planet out here. Yes, it's considered a planet. So you have the sun, the moon, Mercury, moon, Mars, all those planets. So when you understand what each planet or each planetary body means for you internally, then you're able to sort of map out your own psyche or your own cycles as you move along. Another example I would give is that astrology has contributed to life is your regular, your 7-day week, right? Your 7-day week. And the 7-day week is actually very ancient. It comes all the way from the Chaldeans, right? And the Chaldeans are the ones who gave us we know Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And the principle is that the first hour of a day is ruled by a particular planet, and the planet that rules that first hour of that day becomes the god of that day. For instance, the ruler of the first hour of Sunday is the sun, and therefore Sunday is actually based on the deity that oversees Sunday is the sun. The first hour of Monday is ruled by the moon, therefore Monday is moon day. The first hour of Tuesday is ruled by Mars, which is why it is Tuesday. Same thing. Wednesday becomes Mercury, Thursday becomes Jupiter, Friday becomes Venus, Saturday becomes Saturn. So you see, there's usually references. These are very ancient references. And in some ways, astrology is really embedded in our day-to-day lives or how we map out time. Now, one thing I usually tell people is that astrology can be such a powerful tool to self-knowledge or self-development, because there are things that are so peculiar to you that are the next person would see as strange or even unlikely. And a lot of people who come to me for their birth chart readings now appreciate their uniqueness even more. And even for me as a practitioner, it is by studying birth charts that I have come to appreciate people as unique individuals, as unique souls. So no two people are going to be alike at all. So you need to take the time to understand what are the nuances of this particular personality. So we're talking about personalities,
yes,
right? And what are the challenges that this particular type of a personality is bound to run into. Now, when we look at how we map that out, the simplest way is to look at the elements, right? So many people know about the 12 zodiac signs. But other than that, each of those signs work within a certain element, isn't it? The 4 elements. I know you've heard of air signs, water signs. What is your sun sign? Would you know your date of birth is?
July 7th.
July 7th. Okay. That would be a Cancer sun? Probably
I think so,
sun.
yeah.
Yeah, probably a Cancer sun. But you see, that will not give me enough information about who you are as a person. It will tell me, it will give me an aspect of your personality. It won't tell me everything. Because remember, each planet in astrology represents a certain aspect of your personality. So your sun sign, by the way, your sun sign is like the last sign that we look at, because I'm not saying the last as in the least. I'm saying the last because it is the funnel. It is the one through which all these other aspects of your personality is expressed. So when somebody comes for a birth chart, chances are their sun sign is blocked in one way or another. They are experiencing challenges in expressing that sun sign. Because you see, the sun is where you shine the most. It is what comes most naturally to you. And I can see for you as a Cancer sun, I can see how homey and homely this. In fact, when I walked in, I asked you, did you hire someone?
Yes.
And you did it yourself. And it has this, it sort of embraces you and it gives that homely feel. So that's very Cancerian by nature. So I would want to look at, okay, what's your moon sign like? How do you behave instinctually? So if I want to know how you naturally express yourself, I look at your sun sign. When I want to know how you act or behave instinctually or instinctively, we look at your moon sign. If you want to see how you innately communicate, then we look at your Mercury. If I want to see how you relate to the other gender, then I look at your Venus. If I want to see how you relate to your own gender, I look at your Mars, right? And so forth and so forth. Because those are the personal planets. Right? So if you want to know somebody's innate character or innate personality, then you look at that. Another thing I wanted to mention, Jagero, about astrology is that there are people who are averse to being placed in boxes. And I think that's one of the reasons why people say astrology is fake, because why would you say that? Why would you peg my whole personality on the date I was born? But then I would put it to you that that's not, astrology is only one of many types of typologizing people. For instance, you would refer to yourself as an introvert or an extrovert, isn't it? Or an ambivert. That's already a typology, right? And it's not saying this is who you are. It's more of how you tend to express yourself. There are people who are more inward directed. Those are the introverts, and the outward directed, the extroverts. And then there are those who can go between the two. So astrology really is a form of typology. Right. So when you look at it like that, you're able to see, okay, what element am I? It's not just about your sun sign. It's about what is my most dominant element. Cancer is a water sign. A water element. Yeah, it's a water sign. But you might find that majority you have air and fire. You might find. Then you have water, and so it's never really a total view or a total depiction of who you are as a person. I would have to look at what are your dominant elements. Then based on that, I'll be able to tell you, because, you lead with, you have dominant water and say earth. Just as an example, as a water person, you tend to be very emotion-led. You're very empathic, somebody who's able to walk into a room and read the undercurrents and then act accordingly. But again, remember, these are just the aspects, because there's always a challenging one and a positive one. Because water, the positive side of water, being water dominant, is you're very psychic. You're able to just intuit something, and people will ask you, surely, how did you know this? Or you dream something, or you think about somebody and they call, or something like that. You're very in tune with people's emotions and your own, right? So that's the positive. The other challenging aspect of water is that, you see, even the Cancer is a crab. The animal that rules Cancer is a crab. So usually the animals that are associated with water signs are cold-blooded creatures. So I usually tell people, don't imagine that because somebody is a water sign that they're all lovey-dovey and like it's teddy bears and candles and domestic bliss. It's sometimes they can be very cold, the opposite side, especially if you're not plugged into your emotions. You can come across as very cold, or on the opposite side, you can come across as manipulative, because you know how people's emotions work. So you can extract the emotion that you want out of somebody. So that's the one thing about water. Then we have air, right? So air, to define the water signs, that's Scorpio, Cancer, and which is the other one, Pisces, right? Then you have air signs. And air is like the opposite of water. So air signs are the Libras, the Geminis, and the Aquariuses. And I know Geminis get a lot of they get a lot of bad press on in the memes, right? But again, there's always a defense. People always focus on the challenging aspects of Geminis. But the thing about air signs is that they are very rational, logical. They operate from the head space, whereas water signs operate from the heart space. So the thing with them is that they tend to rationalize. Even when it comes to feelings, they will rationalize their feelings. And that can come across as a challenge, but it can be a very powerful aspect to have if you're somebody who is rational. So you can imagine you have water and air. So you're somebody who can go between the heart and the head and sort of balance those things and not be able to be manipulated, because you're able to know, oh, this person is manipulating me, without buying into whatever web they're weaving for you. All right, so we have earth signs. Earth signs are the Virgos, the Tauruses, and the Capricorns. So earth signs are more concerned with the material, their material reality. They want stability, right? You can be a water sign and be an artist, but you can have earth as well as a dominant element, meaning you're caught between wanting to express your gift and wanting to be paid well for it so that you can survive and live and be abundant. So people who are earth dominant tend to thrive where they are rewarded and where they can see outwardly there is a material result of what I'm doing. So when it comes to earth signs, money is one of those things that it can end up being challenging because you're constantly focused on material abundance. Whereas the positive side of earth is, you can imagine, especially in a work environment, you could have a leader who is very air dominant. So they are generating ideas, they are visionaries. And then you have another person who's very earth dominant. Those are the ones who are going to actualize those ideas. So there are people who are actually really good at generating ideas, and there are others who not so much, but they can implement. So you always have to look at it in terms of what is the constructive side, what is the challenging side. Then you have the fire signs. We love the fire signs, the Leos, Sagittariuses. Who else? Aries. Yeah, Aries. So usually fire signs are very happy-go-lucky. They're the ones who are always going on an adventure, or the most willing or daring to go on an adventure. They were always willing to try new things. The fire element, we call it a spiritual element, right? Because it is, remember even in the book of Acts, the day of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit is sort of envisioned as fire. right? As drops of fire, because it moves very quickly through the air and through the elements. So fire is seen as inspiration. So fire signs are not just the people who are very friendly, life of the party. Those are more like the surface level interpretations of people who are fire dominant. Fire dominant people are people who I feel are inspired. They are plugged in. They are more charismatic than the air. Remember I said air signs generate ideas, but fire signs, their ideas come from a different inspired place. So when you find somebody who's really plugged into their fire element, they tend to be the ones who are very intuitive as well. They're the ones who tend to want to try very new things or try very new ideas. They are very eccentric. They are very stylish. So they are unafraid to express themselves. Right. So for you, I would encourage you maybe want to see what are your two dominant elements.
This is the place that you said that you're going to talk about my.
Yes, I think we are going to talk about it at some point. Let me pull my.
Yes. You can.
Yeah, because I want to look at that because those elements are so important. In fact, you might just only survive by knowing your elements and be fine, because without knowing the nitty-gritty, finer details. But let's see what your elements are. I have my suspicions.
You have your suspicions about me?
About your dominant elements. Yeah. It's easier. You can actually, you can speculate so far. You said it's July?
July the 7th. 1982.
Okay. Do you have a time or no? It's not.
It's a duo, so it's night.
Night? Okay. Let me just leave it because night, it changes. The Nini changes every 2 hours. So let me just leave that. I'll just focus on your elements. No, this thing picked up the time. I didn't want to need the time.
It should not pick up time.
I wanted to put unknown time. I wanted to put unknown time. I didn't want it to pick up time. Okay, so let's look at your dominance. Hello? Yeah, you see? You're a Cancer. Well, we'll talk about it. But yes, your dominant is air, 51%. Then the rest.
What do you mean? What do you mean by I am dominant in air?
Many of your planets are placed in air signs. So yes, your sun sign is in a water sign. And you see the point I was making. Your sun sign will not give me all information that I need because you're a Cancer. So somebody might decide to just attribute water to you and say, oh, you're emotional, oh, you're this, you're that, you're this. But not knowing that your dominant element is air. Exactly. Then.
So what then does it mean when you say that my dominance is air?
It means that you're somebody who leads with the head. You're very driven. You're very logical. You're very rational. And then when you balance, usually it's two dominant, and then the other two are like the minimal. Then here you have fire at 18% and water 18%. So you're tied with fire, water, and then air. So this means you're very balanced. Your elements are very balanced, but for the most part, you're very rational. You're a generator of ideas. You're very inspired. You love your travel. You're somebody who does not just look at your group, your immediate group. That's very Cancerian. By the way, Cancer rules the tribe, the family, the home. Tribalism is a dark Cancer trait, by the way. So for you, it's not about just family and home. It's about the bigger picture, right? So you're very expansive. Let me also look at that's just looking at your dominance. Planets. Oh, you have a Libra signature. Ooh, nice. Yeah. So and this is why I tell people never focus on the sun sign, because now for you, because we know that you are air, fire, water, it means that you're both you're intuitive, you're emotionally expressive, or you feel your emotions, but you're able to give them a sort of constructive outlet. You can rationalize your emotions sometimes, which I don't feel is a bad thing at this point. Though, because air is so dominant, imagine your highest is 51% air, then the others are 18%. So you can imagine. So sometimes you might run the risk of over-rationalizing. So you might want to maybe be a bit more spontaneous here and there, which I don't think you have a problem with, given the way I observed you. I was suspecting air and fire.
Do I have fire?
Yes, you have air and fire. And fire is tied with the water for you. Yeah, because they're 18-18. Otherwise, it would be air and fire. Yes.
A lot of people talk about the idea of blood group O, that it's very associated with negative health.
Oh, really? I've not heard about that at all. Is it tied, unless that's a different area? There are people who specialize maybe in medical astrology, so to speak, and then make those associations. So let me not comment on that, because maybe they would have their logic for that. Maybe they would have their logic. So maybe that's under medical astrology.
Okay.
You're O?
I just don't know. I've just forgotten whether I am negative or positive.
Okay.
Is there a negative or positive? Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Let me also put here transits. I want to put transits. I want to see transits. What's going on with your transits? Then that will be but still, actually, let's just look at the chart so we can discuss. Remember what I talked about? We can talk about your personal planets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked about your sun in Cancer. And I think it's very crucial. I think what you're doing, like we said, the sun is the funnel through which all your gifts come out through. So you can imagine if you were not given an opportunity to express yourself artistically. How would you feel?
You know, something that is very interesting about me is that I am somebody that has never been employed in my entire life. I've always wanted to be somebody always in flight, in flight mode. Yeah. If something is happening in Kisumu, I want to be there. If something is happening in South Africa, I want to be there. If there's something going on in Europe, I want to be there. In America, I want to be there. So it's very difficult for me, like, to just sit in an office environment until the routine. I don't do well with routine.
I see, and I think it's because when you look at your elements, I like how you mentioned travel, because that's a very fiery kind of. It's a fiery attribute, and then when you look at I see here you have Sagittarius, a very strong Neptune, and you have Uranus in Sagittarius. You have your really big planets. We call them the transpersonal planets. I would ask you, when you're traveling, what's your main aim? Do you look at also connecting with the cultures or connecting with the people?
Connecting with the people, connecting with museums, connecting with rivers especially. I really love looking at rivers. That's why I've been to Venice. I've been to what is it called? The Czech Republic. There is a river there. So the things that really I love doing are forests, trees. I love the idea of hills, although these days I can't do hills. Yeah. And then, but what I really love are water bodies.
Water bodies. I like that, because that's your secondary element. Yeah. Other than air, then you have earth and fire. Then, of course, you have water there. Though, again, you have your sun placed in a water sign, which rules the oceans as well. Do you enjoy the beach?
I do enjoy the beach, yes.
Wonderful. That's really part of it. And you are somebody who, based on this placement, sun placement, you like an environment that feels like home. Okay, so if it doesn't feel like home, if it just looks like somewhere very alien, you're not going to feel very...
Yeah, that's why I like transforming in my environment. Like, for example, I would do a lot of painting. Like, I paint my house every year here in the city. I changed, like the other time I was telling the guy that made my furniture that I would like to have different colors for the sofa set. Okay. And I would like to remove them, wash them, and take them back. So I have the gray one, and then I have the white one. I told him to do for me an orange one. Yeah.
Wow. So very artistic. So and the art is coming from both the water and the fire elements. So that's really who you are. You're someone who, if you wanted even to start to make it, because it's a passion, it's one of the things, even if you wanted to explore it, even professionally as a side thing, you can totally do it because it comes so naturally. And usually I tell people, monetize something that you're so good at that you can do it for free.
Yeah.
Those are the things that tend to be very successful when you start monetizing them. So that's really great. So that's your sun. So always look at it. Anything you're doing or expressing has to have that homely feel. Then I think it's really well balanced with your moon. I see you have moon in Capricorn, which is an earth sign. And you see your sun is in the sign of the moon, which is interesting. So the moon, because your sun is very expressive and tuned into others and to yourself, your moon is very grounded. Moon in Capricorn is somebody who can be in crisis. They're very stoic. They're somebody who you tend to be the rock for others around you. You tend to be the one who is very stable, or you bring in stability for others. And when in an emergency, you're always thinking, what about a rainy day? So I would ask you even, like, is that something, do you ever worry about the future in terms of, am I able going to...
That is very interesting because I was home the other day and a friend of mine from South Africa was asking me. I told him that I'm doing beans, I am doing millet, I am doing tomatoes, and I'm doing maize.
Yeah.
So he was asking me, so what are you doing? Are you doing subsistence farming? You want to be selling them?
Yeah.
So I was telling him that, my brother died and he left me with his kids. And so what I'm trying to do is that I'm just trying to have lots of dry foods for the future. Because when it reaches around August, December, November, things start becoming very difficult.
Right.
Goro goose for 200, 250 shillings. And it would be amazing if I have millet. So even when I was home, I looked. There is when you want to. I'm moving away from gluten. So I asked for the price of gluten free.
Right.
Gluten free maize, and I found out in Nairobi that it's extremely expensive.
Absolutely.
It goes up to 1,000. For if you want 1 kilogram, it goes up to 2,000.
Wow.
So when I was home, I decided, okay, so how can I get... And then I researched and asked myself, what exactly is gluten-free? I realized that something called tapioca. And then I realized actually cassava. And then there is sorghum. So I said, okay, but then those are not very expensive flours. Why is it expensive?
Yeah.
So I just realized, okay, I can't afford it.
Right.
What can I do? I need to fetch it for myself.
Right.
So I went home. I went and got sorghum.
Yeah.
I looked for grade 1 mila at home. Turns out there is one in Ketito. And so I just went and did 6 kgs of sorghum, millet. Millet, which is also called sorghum, I think. Yeah. And then cassava. And brought them home with me. And brought them to Nairobi with me. So all I need is tapioca flour,
to mix it.
Yes, to mix it, which is just 10% of the flour.
Right. So we are very enterprising, in other words.
Yes.
And you're making use of the earth because Capricorn is also an earth sign.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And it's now you operating. You can definitely see how you are living your own chart. Now, there are people who are not plugged into their own chart. And those are the people who you'll find tend to now seek out people like us because they're trying to understand themselves better or to place themselves in accordance or in tandem or to align. Now, your Mercury, I see you have Mercury in Gemini and you also have Venus in Gemini. That's interesting because Gemini is an air sign again, and Gemini is the one who gets the most flack out here. But I usually say that Mercury in Gemini is, first of all, Mercury rules Gemini. So that's a wonderful placement. It makes you naturally very smart, very witty. Or you're the kind of person who just likes to accumulate information. Geminis are the ones who you'll see in the trivia shows. They know something about everything. They're very smart and they're very youthful in spirit. And I see here, because you have both Venus and Mercury here, you kind of tend to attract or prefer women or partners who are like you, who like that same thing. So your partner is also very smart, also very witty, probably is somebody who's very good with their words, very expressive. But
I married a poet.
Oh, you married a poet. Then you're living. You're aligned. You're aligned. Please tell her you're aligned.
Yeah.
It's a soulmate situation. So it means that you're somebody who has to look at it. Wow, I see your Mercury is right opposite Neptune, meaning you too are a poet or a very expressive writer.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a poet as well.
I'm a poet and a writer. I've written 4 books.
Wow, la, 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 la. And
one of my books is actually somewhere here. I think it is behind you. Yeah, there is The True Citizen. That one, that's my book, and then the other one. The black one where you just removed that one. Yes.
Oh, wow.
That's my book. Yeah.
Wow, I'm inspired because this is inspiring.
Yeah, those are both my books.
Hello.
Yes. Now, I hope that you're enjoying this program. Over the last 15 years, I have been working online for clients in America, in Europe, and all over the world. And that is why it pains me a lot when I see a lot of African brothers and sisters saying that they do not have a job. Now, this is the problem. A lot of people are trying to look for a job in 2024 in their own town, in their own country, in their local area. Now, the truth is, there are no jobs in Africa, at least not so many jobs. The good news is that we have internet these days. We have a tablet, we have a computer, we have a phone, and that means that we can do a lot of jobs. And those jobs are online. That is why over the last 4 years, I've been writing a book that is called Digital Goldmine. It is a book that explains to you how you can earn money online. The 18 hustles that I've chosen are basically for Africans. Okay? Because what happens when you are doing online jobs is that payment is usually a problem. So these 18 side hustles that I have put together in this book, you can be paid very well and very conveniently. Okay, so the book is only 1,000 Kenya shillings. That is about $10. You can buy it in Kenya using pay bill number. You can buy it online from anywhere in the world using a credit or a debit card. All the information about this book is in the description below. Just need to go to the description, click on the link, and you can buy this book. And if you have a brother, you have a wife, you have a husband, you have a friend who is sitting at home and watching Netflix, please do buy this book for them. If you are the one sitting at home and watching Netflix and have nothing to do, please buy this book and your life is gonna change forever. Because I have been doing this online and I've been traveling and I've been enjoying myself and having a lot of fun. So thank you very much. And now back to program.
Although Jagero is a trained journalist, documentary scriptwriter, poet,
yes,
and award-winning playwright.
Yeah.
You're living the dream. Jagero, no wonder you've not come for an astrology, a birth chart reading, because you're actually walking in line with who you are here. So that's
but I think but now we are reading it, you know.
I'm just telling you. Actually, the other thing about these chart readings is that it's not even just telling you about yourself. It's more of bringing like a different aspect or something that will actually help you when you're going out into the world. Let me look at you have Mars in Libra. Mars in Libra. Mars is the aggression or assertion principle. But you're also a diplomat, very diplomatic. Remember how I talked about being a spiritual diplomat for myself? But I see because your Mars is touching the sun. So it means that you're somebody who you are able to see both sides of a situation or both sides of, that God view that we talk about, somebody who understands good and evil and is able to see from the side of man and from the side of the God, right? So you're somebody who you can really become a diplomat if that's what you wanted, or your writing becomes a way of you bridging between either two different viewpoints or two warring factions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I see Sun square Mars square Saturn. You're very, Sun square. Now I'm looking at your aspects. Let me explain what the aspects are, because we've talked about the planets. We just talked about your personal planets. We've not looked at your social planets or your, maybe let me look at Jupiter first. Let me look at your Jupiter and your Saturn. I see you have Jupiter. Jupiter is also in Libra with Mars. So I would ask you, in what way are you unifying two forms of either thought or two different paradigms? How are you a diplomat in your life? Or in what way are you the one bridging between two opposing viewpoints?
So I don't know. I don't know whether this applies, but you see, over the years, apart from being a writer, poet, and all those things, I have always done a lot of tech activism. And I run a foundation called CMS Africa Foundation. So what it does is that I have mostly worked with the Europeans and Americans who are getting to Africa,
right,
to look at how Africans who are techies are using, content management systems,
right,
like WordPress, Joomla, Typo 3, and there are many others.
Okay.
So I think a lot of people come to me to tell them about what is the state of web development using content management systems.
Right.
So in terms of, I don't know whether that is bridging a gap.
Yes.
Telling people, and then I've worked with a lot of companies in terms of helping people to leverage tech to spur their businesses.
Right.
So in terms of if for example you want to have to do email marketing. What are you supposed to be using? Are you going to be using Constant Contact? Are you using this? If you want a Gmail, for example, a professional Gmail, what are you going to be using? Are you going to be using Zoho? Are you going to be using Google Workspace? Are you going to be using Microsoft Office 365? Things like that, yes.
I like that. In fact, you seem to be very passionate.
Yeah.
Just the way you're describing it.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, it's Saturn, both Mars and Saturn in Libra, right? So Jupiter is in Scorpio. So Saturn is exactly what you're describing. Saturn is the one who comes with systems. Saturn is the one who comes with laws, regulations. Saturn is the one who structures things, right? So in your place of work or in your career, you tend to be the Saturnian figure, the one who helps people to map out how to get where they want to, which is great, I think. With the Jupiter in Scorpio, this makes you really a change agent or a force of transformation wherever it is that you're placed. And that's the other thing. Maybe you keep, I don't know if you keep a record of all the changes that you make in every single place that you go or every transformation that you make.
The other day I received an email from Penzu. Penzu used to be a note-taking application. Tambo. I don't know what happened to them, but somehow somebody sort of is resurrecting it.
Oh.
And then they sent me an email that we are back. If you want to look at the things that you've written over the years.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the journaling that I've been doing over the years. It's amazing.
Wow. So you took that up. I hope you took up that.
Yeah. I usually keep records of the things that I do.
Yeah.
I do a lot of note taking.
Okay, I see. Because you're always trying to make sure that you're not reinventing the wheel, because every kind of wisdom or knowledge you're attaining will help in the next project or in the next venture. I'm just looking at so aspects. We've discussed elements, what that means. We've discussed the personal planets, what that means. Now, when you look at aspects, another area that gives me a lot of information is the planetary aspects, and that just means how the different planetary bodies are relating to each other from a geometrical perspective, because you have the 90%, the 90 degree, the 60 degree, the 120 degree, and what have you. So you have your oppositions, your conjunctions, your squares, your trines. So there are certain aspects that are seen to be more harmonious, and other aspects are seen to be more challenging. So if you look at a chart that has a lot of challenging aspects like oppositions and squares, you then look at as either someone who's going to be either very, very successful, and because they are very, very driven, and they see you have a lot of squares. I looked at, was it Mark Zuckerberg? We were born on the same year. but you see different months. I don't have as many squares. He has a lot of squares and oppositions. So I definitely saw that because, and you can see even in his life, based on what he's achieved. So sometimes having some challenging aspects like squares and oppositions, in a way, serve as a driving force. But as long as the other negative aspect is it can keep you in a state of stagnation because you're constantly battling two sides of yourself. So always look at it in terms of how do I bring these two things together. So for you, I see you have Sun square Mars, meaning that your the aspect, Mars is where your Libra, your diplomat is, the one who likes to bridge things and to merge things and also to beautify things, is also in a way challenging the Sun. And the Sun, remember, is in Cancer, where you create a homely environment. So sometimes you have to choose between peace and conflict. And a lot of people who have Libra their life kind of is about those two things, that theme. And sometimes it's okay. What we say about Libra is, yes.
You choose conflict.
Yes. Libra can be instigators, you know that. Yeah, Libra can instigate conflict, much as they are known as peacemakers.
But I don't know what kind of conflict it is, because this is what usually happens to me.
Yeah.
Is that I hardly keep quiet when I feel like I need to speak. So, for example, if I go into a restaurant and somebody's not doing the right thing, I will always speak.
Yeah.
I'm at a supermarket and somebody's not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I'm at an airport and somebody's doing the wrong thing. I will always speak.
Right. You have a Libra signature.
So is that the conflict that we're talking about?
Yes. So it's always about, do I keep the peace or do I confront? And sometimes the confrontation might lead to conflict, which sometimes for Libra, it is easier for Libra to make that decision. So you will find a Libra who leans a lot into peacemaking to the detriment of confronting, or to the detriment of leaning over backwards because they fear confrontation. So I might meet a Libra. You're not that Libra. You're the Libra who's not afraid of confrontation. But there could be another Libra who's now in their shadow side where they are too afraid of stirring up a conflict. They don't want to instigate. They just want things to be the way they were. So for you, that's a theme anyway. And so far, I think so good. Wow, Sun Pluto. Yeah, Sun Pluto, which means you're somebody who makes a lot of change. Wherever it is that you're stepping into, you change. So like, remember, your Sun in Cancer is very domestic, and Pluto is a very transformative agent. So you're someone who can actually get into these home transformation businesses if you wanted to do it. Yeah. Then let's see, Moon square, is it Jupiter? Moon square Jupiter. Would you refer to yourself as an emotional person, or do you try to?
What do you mean by emotional?
Like, let's say something triggers an emotional response. How do you manage it? Or when was the last time you really felt emotional?
I'm always emotional.
Okay. Because Moon square Jupiter predisposes you to bouts of emotional display. It can also predispose you to mood swings. You can swing between one way or the other. So it's just about knowing or being cognizant of that. Then let me look at your Mercury. Ooh. Okay. Mercury trine. This is trine Jupiter. This makes you very smart anyway. This makes you a very smart person. When Mercury hits planets or aspects planets like Jupiter and Uranus, it tends to bring out a genius. Yeah? So somebody who the emphasis is on the workings of the mind or the product of the mind. So I think Jupiter was seen as the supreme god, for the Greeks, Zeus, right? So the Sun and Jupiter are seen as supreme deities. So you can imagine if a mental faculty is associated with one of those, the Sun or with Jupiter or even Uranus, then this tends to yield somebody who can really connect with a higher mind, a universal mind. And also, this means you're able to connect with people from other cultures, different races as well, right? Somebody who can learn languages. Are you interested in languages?
Yeah. But I'm slow.
But okay, it's okay. They're wanting to pick it up, but you do want to pick. If you could learn a language, which language would it be?
The language that I've always wanted to learn is Germany.
Oh, German.
Yeah, it's German. I just like the way they speak with their throats.
As you can see, when you look at a chart, you imagine it's a circle, first and foremost. And another thing I wanted to talk about, just to take us back to the definitions, the circle is, if you look at the Platonic philosophy, and I usually say you can explain astrology with Platonic philosophy. My academic background is also philosophy, so it's even easier, much easier for me to just connect those concepts. Now, under Plato's philosophy, he talks about the divine ideals or the divine forms, that everything that exists materially has a celestial equivalent. Meaning, let's take, for instance, the sun, the astrological sun. So the sun exists both as a body, an actual body, an astronomical body. Then it exists astrologically in the astral realm or in the celestial realm as a concept. So Plato was concerned with the world of concepts. When you understand that things must be concepts first before they become things, then you understand why this something like the sun is taken to rule monarchs or kings, meaning that kings exist as a material expression of the sun, for instance, because the sun is seen as the brightest or the king of the gods. That's why even the lion as an animal is associated with the sun in astrology. So when we look at, for instance, if I look at a judge for me, because they are concerned with justice or they are concerned with the rule of law, would be associated as a material expression of Saturn as a concept, right? So you don't have to, when we experience war, for instance, the year 2024 is very much warlike. And we've also said this, mentioned this last year. We are experiencing Mars. It's a lot of Mars and it's a lot of Pluto, because Pluto is also associated with death as well, or transformation and power. And remember how we talked about power-hungry people sometimes. So you can experience the planets as concepts, right? Or as actual people. If you're on the road and you're being unruly, you will meet with Saturn. And Saturn is the lawmaker. Saturn is the lawgiver. So you will have to learn your limits. So in every case where you are sort of reminded these are your limits, then you're having a certain experience. When you're going to do your exam, especially when it's a KCSE exam, like an exam that where you attain and then now you can practice something, then that is also associated with Saturn because it's an initiation. So we have to think of these celestial bodies as concepts that exist in all realms. And what we're talking about here now is the internalized realm, the realm of the human. Remember, we are in the age of Aquarius. I know you've heard people sing about that a lot.
What does that mean?
Now, the thing about the ages is more like every 2,000 years, it is ascribed, there's a certain zodiac sign that is ascribed to that, and it's usually because of the way the sun is moving. It's called the precession of the equinoxes. So for 2,100 years thereabout, the sun is seen to be in a certain sector, right? So that sector is what then informs, is it the age of Pisces or is it the age of Aquarius or is it which age? And it's retrograde. So Pisces is actually the last zodiac sign, the 12th. But you see, retrograde means it's moving backwards. So it's after Pisces, it should be Aries, but it's not. It's Aquarius because it's retrograde. Now, the age of Pisces was the age of religion. It was the age of the savior. It was the age of the scapegoat, the sacrificial lamb, the martyr, the kind of religious figure who dies or sacrifices themselves for the collective. It's also the wave of the church. It is the age of the church as well. But then once we moved from, there are different schools of thought. There are those who say that we actually entered the age of Aquarius as early as 1911, 1914. And there are others who are saying, oh no, we're going to enter age of Aquarius in 21 something, 100 years from now. But really you have to look at the kind of mindset or the kind of consciousness we're in now to be able to tell. Personally, I believe we're already in the age of Aquarius. Because we talked about the Great Awakening, isn't it? The big shift from religion to spirituality, that's the first one. The other thing is the nature of those religions. We are no longer looking at, you see, the act of Jesus of sacrificing himself. In the age of Aquarius, they'll tell you you're romanticizing sacrifice, you're romanticizing putting other people's needs ahead of your own. This is now a time for accountability. The age of Aquarius is the age of mental health. It is the age where the God is internalized. The God is not out there anymore. The God is in here. No wonder we are talking about astrology, because even these planets represent gods or deities who are inside you as a person. And you can activate whichever deity that you want, or whichever archetype, or whichever concept that you want to activate for whatever you want to achieve. So we have to look at it as the age of Aquarius is also the age of scientific discovery. Not really, it's advancement. Let me not say discovery, because there's been a lot of discoveries for centuries, but rapid scientific advancement, and probably to our detriment, which is why this is the age of the philosopher as well, the one who cautions, the one who says, let us learn our limits, because we are stealing fire, or we are stealing nature's secrets. And it's going to come back, especially if you steal nature's secrets without honoring nature. It comes back to bite you. And we've seen it. Remember how in fact, let's even start with the stealing fire, when whoever discovered electricity. There are so many, before we mastered it, how to navigate electricity, it killed very many people. There was a documentary I was watching on YouTube the other week about the history of household appliances, and how many people have succumbed or have been killed by a toaster or a fridge, or you know what I mean. So it still feeds into that concept of, even as we are advancing, there's always going to be a side effect, because we are not the creators of those concepts or those natural principles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the branches of astrology and the ones that I should practice?
Nice. Well, there are so many actually. There are several. I would say there's the psychological angle. There's psychological astrology, like the one we are talking about, the one that's highly internalized, the one that looks at the individual, the one that sees the chart as a map of the psyche, and therefore a map of the hero's journey. Remember how we talked about Plato's ideas, right? The divine forms. Now, one of the shapes or the forms that Plato saw as perfect was the circle. And if you look at the zodiac wheel, it's circular. And there's a reason why the circle is seen as a perfect shape. It's because it contains the opposites, right? So everything is a wonderful little mixture, or a wonderful little concoction. Now, there's psychological. We have political astrology, which I also practice myself, or it's also called mundane astrology, which is why...
Political.
Yes, political. It focuses more on...
So this one is telling people that whether you should vote for Raila or Ruto.
Something like that. Not really whether you should vote for, but whether they'll make it or not, which I've also done as well. And it's quite...
Whether they will make it or not.
Yes, it was in 2021. I believe it was 2021 when I actually said Ruto will definitely make it. We'll have a better year than Raila. And for reasons, it was for very unrelated reasons. And you see, that's what ended up being the case.
What was the reason?
Raila was going through a spiritual cycle. That was the reason. In 2022, Raila was going through a spiritual cycle. Ruto was going through a material cycle. Remember how we talked about during the spiritual cycle, it's a period of material challenge. During a spiritual cycle, you don't get a job. You tend to lose a job. Whereas in a material cycle, you tend to get hired or make money. Now, Ruto was running for a job in a material cycle, and Raila is running for the same job in a spiritual cycle. Who will get the job between the two? It's going to be Ruto, because his cycle is actually favoring getting a new job. And not just that, because I looked at his cards as well, and I looked at his cycles. He was getting a job where he's the CEO of that organization. So you see, as a president, he's like a CEO of the country, isn't it? So it doesn't mean that Raila should never or not ever run again. It just means that was not the best time for him to run. Or I had also given...
He has been in spirituality for so long.
Yes, but I was also saying the other thing is, if you wanted to be in government, there was always it could have been a joint ticket, because the ticket, and we remember 2008, it was a really good ticket.
2007.
Yeah, 2007, Raila and Ruto. It was an excellent ticket. So what was stopping them from trying to figure that out in this particular 2022? So from my perspective, it was a bunch of paragraphs that I wrote and several posts, over the span of several posts. And I waited. I said, this is risky.
Really?
But let me wait. Yeah. I'll forward you the links. But 2022 came, and in some ways, because of the political environment, I really didn't even think that Ruto would win, because the way, you remember how the wave was going. But I still remembered, based on this, let's see what happens. And you see, in the blink of an eye, iliponyoka, it went. Right? So you have to give it a very objective eye, because if you don't, you'll miss key details, you'll make mistakes. And another thing for me, 2021, I look at it as an initiation, because Raila is my tribesman, isn't it? I mean, I'm biased towards him. It's a natural bias. But this was a case where I had to now put that bias aside. It took me 2 weeks to internalize what I was seeing and to be objective about it. So I was telling...
So would you say that what you were doing was spiritual or scientific?
It was spiritual. It was spiritual, and it was also scientific, or let me call it mathematical. Because when you say science, well, science is defined simply as acquiring reliable information about the world. However you acquire it. And I think it's a nuclear physicist who told me this. We were sitting on a panel last year, and he's a nuclear physicist who's very attuned to the spiritual side of life. So he merges both. And he's also a Kenyan like me, and he's a Luo like me. And it really opened my eyes to how even the scientists can be very spiritual and merge both metaphysics and science and make it into something that is wonderful to behold. You can see how we are still studying the pyramids to date. Nobody can create anything as that can withstand the test of time like the pyramids. So it shows you that this was not just science. There was something else. There was something higher involved, a certain higher knowledge. So let's put it like that. It's more of a higher knowledge, but it depends on the individual and the consciousness of the individual applying it. Right? So I think for me, it was a matter of, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. I'll adjust my things. Probably I've misapplied the formula. But you know what usually happens? When an astrologer is wrong, they blame astrology. They say, it's fake. You see, we told you. Whereas if you get an E in math, they won't say math is fake. They'll say you misapplied those concepts. Therefore, you got an E. So it's the same concept, the same thing with astrology. If I misapply it, it's me, the practitioner. It is not the actual discipline. And there are people who are applying these concepts at very high levels.
So did we answer the question?
Yes, there's political, then there's financial astrology. There are those who can, using cycles.
Nikupee pesa.
Yeah, wapi. Hapana.
Wale wa Tanzania.
No, wa Tanzania hapana.
Unapata hiyo job.
No, it's mostly about for the market cycles, like either is it a bear run or a bull run. There are people who can predict the direction the market will take based on planetary cycles. It's a very precise discipline. Very precise. So I like it because it works purely with cycles. Then you have Vedic astrology. That's from India, from the East. So that's a whole astrological different system from, say, the Greco-Roman or the Chaldean or the Egyptian line of astrology. There's medical astrology. There's so many ways to apply the knowledge of the stars. So I think for us as individuals, we would focus maybe on the first one, the internalized astrology, where you see yourself as a full actualized being, the circle, and looking at the various aspects of the planet as aspects of you or aspects of your personality. Now, there are people who overemphasize on their sun, and they leave all these other things. So usually in the reading, it is my job to bring all these other aspects to your attention. That, maybe you could be leaning on these other things as well. Maybe you're not operating at a maximum, maximizing the fuel.
Yeah, so talking about Raila then, he should have been able to apply astrology in his day-to-day life and see where the
winds are blowing.
Where the winds are blowing. So then how do you use astrology in our daily lives?
I would actually ask people to look at the major, say, conjunctions, or they're called transits. Transits are when, you see, we've looked at your birth chart, the way the planets were when you were born, right? This circle, this is just represents the placement of the planets when you were born. Now, transits are when, remember, Saturn is always moving. Mars is always moving. All these planets are in motion. So while they are in motion, they are making aspects. Remember how we talked about the various degree aspects, 90 degrees, 60 degrees, 180 degrees. So those orbiting planets make aspects to what we call the natal planets. So when they make those aspects, certain aspects, it means it signals certain life events. It signals certain life cycles. And I'll give you an example. One big one that people know, one big life transit that people know about these days is the Saturn return. Saturn takes 30 years to make the full revolution. So usually we say you're not a full adult, or you've not had the entire life experience until Saturn does that full revolution around your chart. So usually that point, the 30-year point, is when people now come. That's the first almost or the second crisis that people have. The who am I? Am I in the right job? Should I be getting married? Should I be having kids? So people start asking themselves. And remember how we talked about Saturn being the one who organizes life, the one who wants you to be stable, the one who wants you to grow up, the one who tests you as well. So there are people who can go through a lot of life challenges between age 29 and 32, because that's now the period. Remember, we call them orbs. The planet, you don't have to wait 30 years of the planet to reach, the exact aspect for things to start happening. No, we have to give it a wide berth or degree so that events start warming up. And then they intensify and then they sort of fade out. So that's why we say 29 to 32, much as we know that it takes 30 years, but there's a prelude. So a year or two before that, you start feeling some pressure. So a lot of people know about Saturn return. But what I usually tell them is, after Saturn return, Saturn does not stop spinning. It keeps going. So it will make a 90 degree at age 35, which tends to also coincide with a bit of depression. And that's when people make big life changes around that time. So that means that the Saturn transit indicates key life cycles or life events. Then we have the midlife crisis indicator, which is Uranus, the Uranus opposition. People in their early 40s, those are also the ones who come to see me at that point because they are feeling the pressure where they
I want us to talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
What exactly happens in the spiritual world or in astrology? Why is it that people hit their midlife crisis in their 40s?
Okay, it's for us,
their early 40s.
Early 40s. In fact, it's from age 38 to 44. Remember how we looked at
because mine has really been ongoing for the last 1.5 years now.
Yes.
2 years, yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. And usually it's attributed to the Uranus movement or Uranus cycle, because it's Uranus is the one that comes to change everything. It's the activist. It is the free spirit of the cosmos. So you can imagine you've been living your life in a certain way, meaning you're clean cut. You are you are a law-abiding citizen. You never take risks here and there. Your life has always been on the straight and narrow for 35 years. Then Uranus does that thing. It opposes your natal, right? So what that means is suddenly it becomes an identity issue. Because remember how I talked about Uranus is the one it's a great awakener as well. It's not as an awakener. It is the one that comes to revolutionize. Uranus is, if you want to track revolutions, study the movement of Uranus, because it was even discovered during the French Revolution and right before the American Revolution. Actually, between the French and the American Revolutions. So it's usually associated with a lot of change, like massive change. So you can imagine, if Uranus can have that kind of impact on a nation, you can imagine on the individual. So the individual kind of feels like a part of them is passing away, is going, something new must come in. And usually that happens when you have not been living the circle. When you just maybe living out your sun and maybe your Mercury or maybe your Saturn sign, but you've ignored all these other things. When Uranus comes to oppose the natal Uranus, suddenly you ask yourself, am I living the best life? Is this the best path for me? My life is almost, I'm almost at the midpoint. Is this what I want to be my legacy? So people tend to have those questions around that time. People change their entire style, even what they look like. It looks like the older them passed away. That's when people
like putting your beard.
Oh yes, or showing up with tattoos, or buying a red car, a red sports car. Changing your style. So it's more about somebody not really shifting the expression. I feel like those are things that have been inside the individual to begin with. It was just that it was stifled or it was repressed. So usually I tell my clients who are between age 38 and 44, this is actually a critical period. Whatever it is that wants to come through, whatever new thing, because you're not meant to do only what you've been doing. When you get to age 40, something has to give. You must feel like you're living your best life. Every part of you has expression. Otherwise, people tend to fall into depression. I have also seen sudden deaths around this time because Uranus mixed with the moon.
Sister.
Yes, Uranus mixed with the moon because the moon is also rules the body. And Uranus rules sudden events. So you can imagine sudden events linked with the body tends to be somebody's heart just caves in. Right? Something adverse happens, you go to bed and you don't wake up. So usually around that time, I tell people it's time to do intense self-work. Do not stifle that part of you that is wanting to come out. I don't care how crazy that part looks like. If you want a bold beard color, do it. I don't care what you do, but try to bring that other side of yourself, right? Or else you're going to sort of throw the baby to the bathwater. You'll self-destruct as opposed to self-developing or adding another layer. So people have to be very, very cautious around that time. And I've done birth charts and I've also done death charts. And death charts, yes.
What's a death chart?
It's when the day that somebody passes away, then you pick up that day and look at the transits, what was happening, or the planetary movements or the planetary aspects that day. And you will see very interesting information when you look
about them.
Yeah, about the person or the state of mind. Let's look at it. Because the way we are looking at this chart, we are looking at it as a map of the psyche. So at least it will tell me the state of mind of this person around this time of their death, or what they were going through, or the life cycle that they were going through, or what was putting pressure on the person around that time. So it's not really to tell what killed the person or cause of death, but really what were the circumstances or the state of mind of this person. Right.
Okay. Then we have the any astrological focus for the year and decade. Can astrology be misused?
Yes, and we saw it. We've seen it. Around the eclipses, it's usually the time when people want to take a fairly regular event, which is like an eclipse. An eclipse happens every 6 months. So we're trying to take, we have many new age groups that are coming up lately, and many of them are doing what I call frantic myth making. So it means they are going to create certain dogma around certain celestial events. So like an eclipse is usually surrounded, when you're in a new age kind of group, there's going to be some mythologizing around an eclipse, or myth making around a leap day of a leap year, or myth making, I know you've heard of 8/8 as well. So it's always going to be associated with some celestial event, which probably is not happening, right? So what I usually tell people to be cognizant of is that you cannot take a regular event, such as an eclipse, and then make a very unique type of meaning to it. That won't happen again in another 6 months, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I usually tell people that we work with eclipses in a different way. For me, I've worked with eclipses. The situation in Israel, I've been looking at it from last year based on their chart. So I usually, because of political astrology, I tell people, okay, it's really easy to track the effects of an eclipse on an individual. Like for you, Jagero, then we can tell where is the eclipse, landing, and then based on this is what's going to happen or what's bound to happen. Or if you look at the birth chart of a nation, which is what I look at. So if I look at the birth chart of a nation and an eclipse falls there, especially on the ascendant, the rising, then it creates a lot of the need to prove yourself on the world stage. And how do nations of means prove themselves on a world stage? If not invading the next person or, being, aggressive on the world stage. So I usually caution people to be just a bit more, what can I say? Not sensationalize certain events, especially if they are regular. Don't do that. And then also, don't give in to events that or predictions that fill you with anxiety. Because if someone tells you the world is ending, honestly, what more can you do? Is there something you can do to change it? No. If there isn't anything you can do to change it, then why is this person telling me this? With what spirit are you telling me this? Especially if I can't change it. And this is where building the spirit of discernment comes in. And because right now, knowledge is so in the information age, it is much easier to go in and verify some of this information. So a lot of my clients tend to reach out to me around those times, around the time of a celestial event, and then it has been captured by various groups and even churches, because I saw there are actual, charismatic churches that were latching on to some of these celestial events. So I have to take time to sort of teach them and explain why that is inaccurate. Let the astrologers tell you what those particular placements or those transits mean. Because if you go to somebody else who's not primarily an astrologer, then you're at their whims at this point, right? For me, before I make a prediction, Jagero, I need a mountain of evidence. Sorry, I need to make in my head, because then I will feel like I have done my due diligence. There is rigor. And usually when that happens, I tend to be right, or it tends to be accurate to a very, actually it's uncanny at this point how accurate it is. So you see, it's because I'm an astrologer, because I know that it's my reputation on the line. It is the reputation of astrology on the line when I'm putting pen to paper. So you cannot compare that, an astrologer practicing astrology, with, say, it's a preacher, charismatic preacher applying astrology, because that's not their main thing, isn't it? They are probably just bringing it in to help explain something, but they might be wrong. And for them, usually they are. Usually they are. So consult an astrologer where when you're in doubt, get a few trainings. I'm hoping to start to teach a few courses in astrology, maybe this year. So just try to get as much knowledge as you can. So I tell people, try to look at your transits around age, between age, the big ones are the Saturn return, age 28 to 32, age 35, 38 to 44. And even if you go further, if you go younger, even 25, because that's also a Saturn opposition. So that's also a significant life cycle.
Right. Thank you very much. The last thing that we were supposed to do is briefly review Jagero's birth chart that we started with.
Which we did.
Yeah, so I think that is done.
Yeah.
We are going to be speaking again, episode 4, I believe.
Yes.
Spirituality and relationships and marriage.
Yeah.
What is this about?
I'm going to actually focus on the masculine and feminine principles. We are going to look at the gender wars as actually a spiritual war, and how it is holding us back as a continent, as a nation. And we can see what's been happening, especially the beginning of this year. There's just a lot of rough edges. The genders are not relating as well as they should be relating. And maybe to shed more light on that and how we can better relate as different genders, and then bringing in the esoteric principles behind that. Right. I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you very much. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, when somebody, what exactly are your services?
Oh, my services. I do tarot readings, birth chart readings, ancestral readings.
Ancestral?
Ancestral, yeah. Ancestral reading.
I think we should do my ancestral reading. It's very interesting.
Yeah,
maybe in the next episode we should touch a little bit on it.
We'll touch
what do you
on
need
it.
for you to read my ancestral?
Well, not much. It's just that I usually do it in that one is the traditional divination. I do it traditionally. I use my shells. So whereas tarot reading, I use cards. With ancestral, I use.
So I have to be naked.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to be naked. But I'll probably have to be decked. I'd have to be decked out somewhere and whatnot. But we can always organize what I can do for you. And I usually do it because a lot of my clients are not even in the country. I do them virtually as well.
It will be very interesting for people to see. You can put a lot of those secrets down there. See what we.
No, but you know what? I'm just happy that there is that interest first and foremost, because when the interest is there, then it means
my ancestry is pretty complicated. There's a lot of inheritance, a lot of names, namings that are the same. You know, yeah. Like my grandmother killed a lot of men.
Oh wow!
Not killed a lot of men in the sense that they were dying. I think 4 of them.
Really?
Yeah, he had 4. She had 4 husbands. My great grandmother.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, so they were dying, and then she's inherited. Then they die, and then gets another man.
Oh, so she's like Teru. She's Teruod. Okay.
Yes.
Right,
people of the internet, thank you very much for tuning into this episode. Please subscribe. Please hit on that notification bell. A lot of people do not understand the reason why we tell them to subscribe.
Yeah.
So when they subscribe, we get people to join.
Yes.
The messages travel far and wide.
Absolutely.
And even when you want a specific, guest to come to this to this podcast, they will look at the numbers.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh.
Yes, and that is the reason why you should also subscribe, so that you get the guest that you want.
Yeah.
Until another episode, bye for now.
Bye.